There are towns that fade from history, and then there are towns that actively erase it. Buried deep in old regional archives was a settlement once known as Ravenport Hollow, a rural American logging town that officially existed for only 36 years before being quietly abandoned in 1949. No war, no natural disaster, no economic collapse, just silence. Records show something strange happened there in October of 1948, something so disturbing the town council, local church, and county authorities signed a joint order banning any reenactment, discussion, or documentation of what they called simply the ritual. Not a religious ceremony, not folklore, a ritual, and it was only ever performed once. After that night, families fled, homes were left furnished, church records stopped mid-sentence, and every witness gave the exact same statement before refusing to ever speak again. Most towns hide crimes. Ravenport Hollow buried an entire event. In 1996, renovation crews clearing a condemned Pennsylvania courthouse discovered a locked evidence drawer hidden behind a false panel. Inside was a leather-bound journal tagged with an old property label, County Archive, Ravenport Case. The pages were brittle, water-stained, but still readable. It belonged to Deputy Harold Mays, the officer sent to Ravenport Hollow the morning after the ritual. His first entry read, "I was told this was a welfare check. What I walked into was not a town. It was something that looked like one after everyone inside it had agreed to something they shouldn't have." He described candles burned down to the wood floors of the church, symbols carved into pews, a circle marked in ash and salt across the altar, and 37 townspeople sitting motionless when he arrived, alive, breathing, but unresponsive, not drugged, not injured, just empty. The final line of that entry, "Whatever they did here last night, they didn't finish it." Deputy May's journal wasn't the only document recovered from the town. Tucked inside the back cover was a folded set of thin, typewritten pages. No signature, no letterhead, no origin, just a title centered at the top, "Procedure for the Opening." The steps were disturbingly specific. 37 participants required, must be residents born within town limits. Ritual must begin precisely at 12:13 a.m.c. Candles placed in a spiral, not a circle. The altar must be covered in soil taken from beneath each participant's home. No names spoken after midnight. No one may leave before completion. But the final line was the one circled repeatedly in May's handwriting. The last voice heard must not belong to the living. That sentence didn't read like metaphor, it read like instruction. County mail records later confirmed something impossible. Those pages had been delivered to the church 3 days before the event, in an envelope that carried no postmark. No courier remembered bringing it. No priest admitted requesting it, but someone in Ravenport Hollow followed every step exactly. At first, investigators assumed cult involvement, but Ravenport Hollow wasn't some fringe religious commune. It was a normal American town, lumber workers, teachers, shopkeepers, church families. So why would nearly the entire adult population willingly take part in something this deliberate, this forbidden? The answer came from a single surviving church memo, dated October 18, 1948. It mentioned an escalating problem that had plagued the town for months. Children hearing voices beneath their beds, livestock found standing in the woods facing nothing, doors opening at night, bells ringing inside empty homes, people reporting whispers coming from underground, and one repeated phrase written by the pastor, It knows our names. Whatever was happening in Ravenport Hollow wasn't invited by the ritual. The ritual was an attempt to stop it. Town elders believed the instructions weren't summoning something, they were sealing it, and they were desperate enough to try it only once. According to Deputy Mays's reconstruction, the ritual began exactly as instructed. At 12:13 a.m., the church doors were locked from the inside. 37 residents sat along the spiral of candles: farmers, parents, the school teacher, the mayor himself. No chanting, no prayers, just silence. Because the instructions were clear, after midnight, no one was allowed to speak a name, not their own, not anyone else's. The townspeople believed the entity haunting Ravenport Hollow recognized individuals by name, that names acted like anchors. By removing them, they hoped to confuse it, trap it, sever its hold on the town. The soil taken from beneath each home was poured across the altar like a burial mound, symbolizing every life tied to the town being offered as a barrier. But Mays later wrote something unsettling. Every witness described the same moment, when the candle stopped flickering, not dimmed, not blown out, stopped, as if the air itself froze. And that's when they heard it, a voice from beneath the church floorboards, calling them without using names. The survivors, the 37 found sitting in silence, eventually gave fragmented testimony before shutting down entirely. But investigators managed to record one chilling detail before the ban was enforced. They said the voice underneath the church didn't just whisper, it spoke in the exact tone of loved ones. Mothers heard their children, husbands heard their wives, some heard voices of relatives who had been dead for years. The instructions had warned them, the last voice heard must not belong to the living. But no one understood what that meant until it was too late, because when the entity spoke, people began responding, not with names, but with recognition, and recognition was enough. One by one, participants stood and stepped toward the altar mound, as if something familiar was calling them home. No struggle, no screams, just obedience. Mays underlined a final observation. They didn't summon it, they let it choose them. Out of 37 participants, only 36 remained seated when authorities arrived. One was missing. Her name appeared in a torn margin note later recovered from the church registry. Evelyn Carter, age 32, schoolteacher, lifelong resident, chosen to sit closest to the altar during the ritual. Witnesses described the moment she stood differently from the others, while everyone else moved slowly, almost sleepwalking toward the soil mound. Evelyn stepped forward immediately, as if she had been waiting. One survivor later whispered during questioning, "It called her first. It called her before it even started speaking." Deputy Mays noted deep scrape marks across the altar wood, not from struggle, but from pressure, like hands gripping hard before being pulled downward. The soil mound had collapsed inward, not scattered, sunken, as if something beneath the church had opened and swallowed exactly one person. No remains were ever found, but something else was. Every surviving participant reported the same thing after leaving the church that night. They could still hear her. Not Evelyn's voice, but something using it. Soft knocking, under floors, inside walls, beneath beds, always followed by whispering that mimicked the missing schoolteacher perfectly. Deputy Mays wrote, "Whatever took her didn't leave with her. It spread." Within days, people stopped sleeping. Children screamed about the teacher under the house. Families tore up floorboards searching for a voice that moved. The town descended into hysteria. The ritual hadn't sealed the entity, it had fed it an identity. It now had a human voice, a human memory, and a way to call from anywhere. That's when county officials stepped in, and that's when the ritual was permanently banned. By November 1948, Ravenport Hollow was no longer functioning as a community. Sheriff reports described residents behaving like sleepwalkers, standing in corners of their homes at night, listening to floors that tapped back. People claimed Evelyn's voice was inside their houses, moving room to room beneath them. Some began digging holes in their kitchens, others tore open walls. Families slept outdoors to escape the knocking that followed wherever they went. But the most disturbing detail came from medical notes taken by a visiting county doctor. Residents were speaking in her voice without realizing it. Mid-sentence, their tone would change, their posture would stiffen, their eyes would unfocus. Then they'd whisper phrases no one remembered teaching them. "You opened it. I'm still here. Let me back up." It wasn't haunting them. It was wearing her. The ritual hadn't summoned a spirit. It had given something beneath the town permission to imitate a human mind. On December 3, 1948, the county issued an emergency removal order. Official reason: structural instability from uncontrolled digging. Unofficial reason: buried and sealed paperwork. Psychological contagion linked to ritual exposure. Residents were relocated in the middle of the night under supervision. They were separated, interviewed individually, warned never to discuss Ravenport Hollow again, and every one of them signed the same document. "I acknowledge the events witnessed cannot be described, repeated, or reconstructed without risk of recurrence." The church was boarded shut, the town was declared abandoned less than a year later, and the ritual instructions locked away, stamped, performed once, prohibited permanently. In 1974, county officials authorized a quiet inspection of the abandoned Ravenport Church before demolition. No press, no public record, just 3 men and a locked building that hadn't been opened in 26 years. Inside, dust coated everything: pews, hymnals, altar cloths frozen in time. But the soil mound was still there, untouched, hardened like packed clay across the altar, and something had pushed through it from below, not broken outward, raised, like something had tried to come back up. One inspector described the floor beneath the altar as warm. Another claimed he heard faint tapping under his boots. The third man refused to enter the sanctuary at all, later writing only, "The air felt occupied." The demolition order was canceled the same day. The church was sealed again, this time with iron chains added to the doors. One of the 1974 inspectors carried a handheld recorder. Most of the tape was silence, footsteps, creaking wood, breathing. Then came the knocking. 3 soft taps, directly beneath the altar, followed by a woman's voice emerging through static. Not loud, not distorted, calm, recognizable. "You left me down here." The men fled within seconds. The tape was catalogued, but never released publicly. It was stored in county evidence under restricted status with a handwritten warning. "Audio mimics missing subject Carter. Do not replay alone." After that inspection, Ravenport Hollow's church was never opened again. Not by the county, not officially. In 2008, a group of urban explorers located the remains of Ravenport Hollow after noticing the church still standing despite decades of abandonment. The building was rotting, leaning, half swallowed by the forest, but the chains were still on the doors. Inside, everything was unchanged from 1948. Pews intact, candles melted into wood, the altar mound still hardened like a grave that never settled. One explorer later described placing his hand on the soil. He felt vibration, slow, rhythmic, like breathing underground. Another swore the church floor echoed with soft knocking after they began filming. They left within minutes, but one thing stayed behind: their audio recorder. When they reviewed the file later that night, there was a voice layered beneath their own, not loud, whispered, patient. "You remembered me." Experts who later studied the documents reached one horrifying conclusion. The ritual wasn't meant to trap something. It was meant to force it into a single host, one sacrifice to prevent it from spreading across the entire town. But it failed. Instead of being contained in Evelyn Carter, it learned from her, copied her, used her voice as a doorway into every surviving participant. The ritual didn't seal the entity. It decentralized it, turned it into something that could exist anywhere. It was remembered, spoken about, or investigated, which is why the county banned not only the ritual, but any retelling of it, because remembrance was part of the opening. Today, Ravenport Hollow no longer appears on maps. Most of the town has collapsed back into the earth, but the church still stands. Locals avoid the area entirely. Satellite images show disturbed ground beneath the altar section even now, soil that sinks and rises slightly year after year, like something below still shifts, still waits, still listens for voices above it, for names, for recognition, for someone willing to finish what was started at 12:13 a.m. on a single October night in a town that no longer exists.